The young and the restless spoilers. Clare stood at the edge of the terrace, the moonlight casting a pallid glow over her sharp features and the fine silk of her nightgown. The gentle breeze that drifted in from the riverbank below did little to soothe the tempest roiling within her. Every heartbeat thundered in her ears as she thought about Audra, Audra's confident smile, the way she moved through a room as though it already belonged to her. Clare felt exposed, vulnerable, as though at any moment Audra would tear away the fragile veneer she had so carefully constructed. The threat was acute, insidious. Audra's whisper could undo everything Clare had built. And Clare, the daughter of Jordan, whose hidden lineage bore the taint of something otherworldly, would allow nothing and no one to stand between her and her destiny. A storm gathered in her dark eyes, for she understood that if Audra's influence continued unchecked, the consequences could be ruinous. She had to act, and swiftly. She remembered the stories her mother had told her when she was a child, stories laced with dread and fascination, of their family's true heritage. Tales whispered at midnight, no, not whispered, but declared boldly as if fear itself had no hold there. Of a demonic ancestor whose power had been sealed away but whose blood still pulsed in every descendant's veins. Jordan had fought to suppress it, to raise a daughter who would never know darkness. But the blood had a will of its own, and Clare had felt its stirrings only recently, sharp, cold tendrils of instinct that told her to protect herself by any means necessary. She could no longer deny it. Audacious, feral impulses guided her thoughts, urging her toward a brutal solution. It was Audra or her, nothing in between. Cole watched from the shadows of the library doorway as his daughter, the child he adored, paced back and forth, her silhouette tense with determination. He knew that look, he had seen it on her mother's face when rage and fear collided in dangerous harmony. Cole's heart ached with love and terror in equal measure. He wanted to cradle her in his arms, to tell her that everything would be all right, but he feared that any show of weakness would shatter the fragile alliance they had forged. Clare had grown distant, guarded herself behind dark secrets, and Cole had no choice but to stand by her. His loyalty to Jordan's bloodline, tainted though it might be, compelled him to protect Clare at all costs. She was his daughter, and he would not abandon her now. "Father," Clare said at last, her voice low and measured, "I need you to help me." There was no plea there, merely a command wrapped in icy calm. Cole approached, steeling himself. He knew the moment had come to choose between conscience and family. The plan was simple in conception, terrifying in execution: abduct Audra, silence her forever, and dispose of the body in the river's merciless current. Once they threw her beneath the swirling waters, the world would believe she had vanished by misadventure, a tragic accident, or perhaps the work of cruel fate. No one would suspect Clare or Cole, no one would dare. Having rehearsed the steps in his mind, Cole felt the gravity of his actions weigh heavily on him, but he knew that to refuse would mean abandoning his daughter to destruction at another's hands. They began preparations under the cloak of night. Clare donned a long black trench coat, her hair slicked back so as not to betray her identity. Cole concealed himself behind a dark cap and gloves, each movement deliberate. They drove in silence to the old boathouse, its weathered boards creaking like agonized lungs in the wind. Moonlight fractured through broken slats, painting jagged shadows across the concrete floor. Audra's last performance had left her exhausted, unaware that danger watched from the darkness. Clare's heart hammered as they positioned themselves near the boathouse door. The plan had to unfold flawlessly: no screams, no stray witnesses, no mistakes. Audra would be taken quickly, blindfolded, transported to the riverbank, and then oblivion. All the while, Clare rehearsed what she would say if Audra looked at her with wide, fearful eyes: nothing. Silence. Only the cold certainty that this was a necessary sacrifice. Inside the boathouse, Audra stood by the oars, lost in thought as she examined the price of her success. She hadn't noticed the powerful force that crept upon her. One moment she was alone, the next, a strong hand clamped over her mouth, and pain blazed in her side as she was dragged backward. Audra struggled, her instincts screaming for escape, but the blindfold cut off her sight, and fear stole her breath. Claire's whispered instructions to Cole were precise. Tie her hands, then lead her out. Audra's muffled cries echoed in the hollow space of the boathouse, a desperate song that tugged at Cole's heart. For a moment he hesitated, his resolve wavering. But then he felt Claire's hand brush his arm, and the memory of the threat she faced steeled his will. They bound her wrists, her legs, and shoved her into the trunk of the waiting car. Audra's struggle grew frantic, every movement a plea for mercy. Claire pressed her face close to the trunk lid, her voice barely a hiss. "You had this coming," she promised, her words laced with venom. Then she slammed the lid shut. The drive to the river was a blur of headlights cutting through mist and the roar of Claire's racing pulse. Each red light threatened to unravel everything. Every passing car held the specter of discovery. Yet they arrived at the riverbank unchallenged. The chill in the air bit through Claire's coat. Beneath the skeletal trees, the river gleamed like liquid night. Cole opened the trunk and pulled Audra out, her body limp from shock. Claire watched with clinical detachment, a predator sizing up its prey. They laid Audra on the ground, and Claire drew a length of rope from her coat. For a heartbeat, Audra's terrified eyes met Claire's, and in that silent exchange, something flickered, regret? Pity, but it vanished as swiftly as it came. The final moments were swift, merciless. A single blow to the temple, guided by Claire's unerring hand, and Audra went still. Cole wrapped her body in an old canvas tarp. Together they bound the bundle tightly, hefted it, and carried it to the river's edge. Claire hesitated, watching Audra's face pressed against the rough cloth, her chest no longer rising and falling. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then she dropped the bundle into the cold, black water. It slipped beneath the surface, swallowed by swirling currents that would carry it away, far downriver where it would never return. They remained motionless until the last eddy dissolved the final silhouette of the tarp. Then Cole and Claire turned away, their footprints swallowed by the mud as though they had never been. They drove home in grim silence, the enormity of what they had done weighing heavily on each of them. Claire did not speak. Her eyes were hollow, yet in them burned a fierce light, satisfaction mixed with shame, triumph entwined with guilt. In the days that followed, the town was awash with rumors of Audra's disappearance. Speculation ran rampant, a lover's quarrel gone wrong, a tragic accident, even foul play by a rival. Nobody could imagine the truth. Claire moved through her life with deceptive normalcy, her laughter light, her eyes bright. Cole stood sentinel by her side, ready to silence any who dared ask too many questions. Yet deep within Claire's soul, the demon's blood whispered. It had tasted freedom, the power of eliminating a threat with the flick of a blade. And now that she had crossed this line, there was no turning back. She would not permit even the slightest weakness to creep in, not now, not ever. Her world was hers to command, and any who dared challenge her would meet the same fate as Audra. Late one night, Claire returned to the terrace where the plan had first taken shape. The moon had shifted, clouds drifted overhead like silent witnesses. She closed her eyes and breathed in the night air, steadying herself. The threat was gone. Audra was gone. And Claire, daughter of Jordan, rightful heir to a power both human and inhuman, had claimed victory. Her gaze lifted to the sky, and she whispered into the darkness, "I am mine own guardian." In the silence that followed, there came an echo, distant, faint, a promise of something yet to come. Cole watched from below, unsure whether to feel relief or dread. Claire had won this battle, but the war within her had just begun. And as the first streaks of dawn lightened the horizon, both daughter and father understood that life in Genoa City would never be the same again. Claire's newfound composure in the days following Audra's disappearance was almost surreal. She glided through the corridors of Newman Enterprises with a calm certainty that belied the storm of guilt and exhilaration beneath her skin. Her laughter, light and airy, floated through the hallways and unsettled anyone who paused long enough to hear it. She spoke easily of trivial matters, spring fashions, corporate acquisitions, family dinners, her voice carrying no hint of the monstrous secret she carried in her heart. But her unshakable cheer only inflamed the very suspicions she so carefully sought to allay. Kyle, Audra's steadfast friend and business partner, watched her from a distance, his brow furrowed and his jaw set with mounting dread. It seemed impossible, Audra, vivacious and full of life, simply gone without explanation. No call, no note, no trace. And while the police diligently scoured every avenue, checking hospital records, questioning acquaintances, canvassing the riverbank, Kyle found himself blocked at every turn, as though an invisible wall had been erected between his quest for truth and the reality he sought. His frustration grew with each unanswered question. He combed through Audra's apartment, searching for clues, but found nothing beyond the ordinary: a half-packed suitcase, a ledger of expenses, a lipstick-stained coffee mug on the counter. Every thread seemed to lead to a dead end. At the office, he confronted Clare under the pretense of concern. Leaning across her desk, voice low and earnest, asking simple questions: had she spoken to Audra recently? Did she know of any pressing engagements? Clare, with her porcelain smile, looked at him as though he had asked whether the sky was blue. Not since last week, she said, her tone breezy. She seemed fine. I wish I could help you find her. The words dripped with sincerity that made Kyle's stomach twist with suspicion. How could she be so unmoved? Audra had been her friend. Close enough to be invited to family gatherings and whispered confidences. Yet, here she was, unaffected by the void her disappearance had carved in Kyle's heart. Rumors began to ripple through the social circles of Genoa City. Whispers of foul play, of hidden grudges, of sudden deals gone wrong. The local press, always eager for sensational headlines, printed half-truths and inflammatory innuendo. Top executive's best friend vanishes, Audra's secret dealings exposed, corporate scandal or personal vendetta? Kyle felt the weight of each headline as a personal blow. He contacted the police chief directly, laying out his case: Audra's character, her contributions to Newman Enterprises, her lack of any apparent motive to vanish on her own. The chief agreed to escalate the investigation, assigning 2 detectives to follow Kyle's leads, but even they returned empty-handed, their reports noting only the absence of evidence, the silence of those who had known Audra best. Meanwhile, Clare and Cole met nightly in the seclusion of the family's old carriage house, its dusty rafters and cracked windows offering a sanctuary from prying eyes. There, Cole pledged his unwavering protection. He promised that if the truth ever threatened to emerge, he would shoulder every accusation, every ounce of blame, shielding Clare from the fallout. His voice was steady, yet Clare sensed the tremor beneath his resolve. Cole was a man renowned for his integrity, for his refusal to compromise when justice demanded it. And yet now he spoke of lies, of perjury, of burying a body in the river's depths. The dichotomy of his promise, a sacred vow to protect his daughter at any cost, shivered through the air between them. Clare placed her cold hand on his, the blood of their demonic ancestor humming between their veins, and felt both comforted and terrified. She had unleashed forces she could not fully contain, and Cole's vow only deepened the web of complicity that bound them. As the police investigation intensified, Kyle became a phantom in the corridors of power. He attended board meetings, sat in on strategy sessions, always vigilant for the slightest slip from Clare's polished facade. Any hesitation in her voice, any falter in her expression, he believed would crack open the secret she guarded. But Clare had honed her instincts along with a ruthlessness that matched her father's. When a detective visited her office, badge gleaming, questions pointed, Clare answered without hesitation, her narrative flawless. Audra had been under personal stress, she'd threatened to leave town, they'd argued, and then, she simply vanished. Perhaps she wanted a fresh start, Clare had suggested sympathetically, as though lamenting a dear friend's sudden departure. The detective scribbled notes, nodded, and moved on, visibly relieved by her cooperation. In that moment, Clare felt a rush of triumph and revulsion. She had outmaneuvered them all, but at what cost to her own soul? Night after night, Kyle pored over timelines and phone records, retracing Audra's steps in futile hope of finding a misstep in Claire's tight script. The police set up roadblocks and river patrols, dredged sections of the creek near the boathouse, and interviewed fishermen and late-night motorists. Reporters camped outside Audra's last known locations, snapping photos of empty taxis and closed storefronts. Yet the silence endured, as deep and impenetrable as the river's black current. Every sunrise found Kyle's resolve hardening into obsession. He would not rest until he held the truth in his hands. In the dark hours, Clare lay awake in her opulent bedroom, listening for the knock that would shatter her perfect world. She envisioned Kyle's face contorted with betrayal, then the stern lines of the chief of police as he read her Miranda rights. She imagined Cole at her side, carrying the burden she had laid upon him, his broad shoulders cracking under the weight. And she felt a flicker of doubt, could she truly escape unscathed? The demonic blood in her veins whispered promises of power, urged her toward an unforgiving destiny, but somewhere deep inside, a fragile human heart throbbed with fear. Yet when dawn broke, Clare rose and dressed as though Audra had never existed, as though guilt and dread were simply inventions of a frantic imagination. She greeted reporters with a poised smile, her posture flawless, her words measured. In her eyes there was steel, and in her voice a confidence born of a secret too terrible to share. She had won the first battle, no, the first series of skirmishes, against suspicion and suspicion's ally, the relentless pursuit of truth. But Kyle's shadow loomed ever closer, and the detectives prowled the edges of her world like hunters scenting fresh blood. Cole, seated at the kitchen table each morning with his coffee gone cold, watched his daughter with both pride and sorrow. He had taken her side, sworn to bear the blame, and in doing so had trapped himself in a conspiracy from which there was no easy escape. He wondered if he had condemned her to a fate darker than any he had ever imagined. For in protecting Clare, he had sealed his own damnation. And so the stage was set for the next act, Kyle's relentless probing, the police's tightening net, and Clare's ever-sharpening resolve to remain untouchable. Beneath the deceptively tranquil surface of Genoa City, a current of fear and blood ran strong. Each player, Clare, Cole, Kyle, the detectives, moved in a dance of half-truths and hidden motives, edging inexorably toward a climax none could yet foresee. The question that haunted Clare now was not whether the world would discover her crime, but whether she would discover herself before it was too late.